I'm going to be showing you how I've set up my SmallHD Indy 7 on my RED Komodo, and I'm also going to go over all the different tools and all the different windows that I like to use whenever I'm on a shoot. Alright, so if you own any of the touch panels from SmallHD, so the Focus 5, the OLED 5, the Focus 7, any of those touch panels, this guide should still work. Now, if you want to know more details about the Indy 7, well, you can actually check out my review up over here. I currently have the Indy 7 plugged into my RED Komodo, and I don't have the Komodo Control installed on this monitor yet. When I was buying the monitor, I was wondering, do I get the bundle with the Komodo Control app, or do I just get the monitor? And I decided to just get the monitor first and try it out. And when this arrived, a couple of weeks later, SmallHD put out a firmware update, and it actually let you put your Komodo settings on your screen. Obviously without the touch functionality, but it still lets you see the screen with, your iris, your shutter angle. You can still see your traffic lights, and you don't have to look on your little screen here. You can still see it on this screen. So when you're pulling focus, you're not going and looking at two different screens. So I think that's really handy. Now, if you're a Komodo user and you're wondering how the heck do I enable this feature? I can't figure it out. Well, you just need to go into your menu, and you need to go into SDI, and you need to make sure that SDI overlay is displayed. So whenever I'm on a shoot, I want to be as quick as I can to make sure that I dial in the correct settings for my camera and not be wasting time stuffing around trying to get the correct exposure. That's why for me, having this monitor or an external monitor, I think is a huge advantage to getting to those settings really quick and getting them dialed in super fast. Let's have a look at how I've set up my custom pages. So looking at the first page, I've got my aspect ratio, I've got my look, I've got focus sharpening, I've got audio meters, and I've also got my crosshatch. Now with the aspect ratio, I generally shoot with a 2:35 ratio in mind, especially on the weddings and music videos. So to do that, I have this set to a custom ratio of 2:34/1. And to do that, I've got my width set to 100 and my height is set to 76. And I've also got my color set to black and my opacity to 40%. Now you can change this to however you want. It's just all a personal preference. You just do you. All right, so on to focus peaking. And honestly, this is probably my favorite function and why I think the SmallHD stuff stands out against all the other brands. Now, this is in my opinion. Now, if you haven't used this function before, what peaking is, or what it does, is it over sharpens the image where your focus point is. Now, I think this is a huge, huge help. I actually like this function way better than focus assist because it doesn't actually introduce that color and distract my composition. So now over into my settings, if we go into peaking, I've got my intensity set to 12, I've got my brightness set to 0, and I've got my contrast set to 5. Now you can just do whatever's gonna work for you. This is not actually baked into your image. It's just helping you really pull focus. So now let's head over to our looks. And I generally toggle between a few different favorites. When I'm using my Sonys, I'm generally using a LUT from Lutify, and that one's called Marston. And I'll usually dial my intensity down to about 30. Now, I don't usually use this look in the final edit of my film, but what it does is it helps me get a good idea of what my image, may look like. Now, when I'm using my Komodo, this is a little bit different, and there are a ton of different ways that you can do it, but with the way that I've got it set up is I've got an image LUT, so it's on the Komodo already, so it's outputting a LUT to my monitor. And what I've got is its output color space is set to Rec 709. I've got a high contrast output tone matte, and the highlight roll-off is set to very soft. Now what happens is on my monitor, then what I do is I apply another LUT, which is what I like to call my look. And that's set to my custom LUT that I've made for this. And I've just set that intensity down to anywhere between 50 to 70%. And again, that's just gonna give me a rough ballpark of what my image is gonna look like. All right, so next we have our crosshatch, and that one's set to yellow. And no, yellow isn't my favorite color. I just think it pops way better on a screen. I have the opacity set to 50 and the regions I've got to 3. And this is what is gonna just help me with composition. Now we've also got my audio meters, and the size is at 50. I've got 2 channels, and I've got the opacity set to 100%, and it's located down the bottom. Now, I generally flick this on and off because I don't really need it all the time. With the new update from SmallHD, it's actually already got audio meters displayed on the screen for me. All right, so because I'm checking my exposure constantly through a shoot, the cool thing about the SmallHD is this swipe feature, right? So now it can be a little bit fiddly, to be going through the side here and, clicking those buttons to get to a certain tool. So instead, being able to swipe across, I think is just a way more efficient way to get to a window or a tool that you're going to be using more through a shoot. So for me, that's exposure assist. So what I like to do is do a quick swipe over to see a quick snapshot of what's over or underexposed in my frame. And also, it lets me check the skin tone on an artist or the person that I'm filming. And then I can quickly swipe back again and I can continue filming. Now I like to get the exposure on people's faces to sit around that green area, which is around that 70 to 60 RE or IRE. And it's slowly fading into that blue area. That's where I've found I get the best results on properly exposing people's faces. Being able to just swipe across and quickly see, that window's is blown out. And if I move over here, I'll protect those highlights and I'll still get a good looking frame, as well as I'll get good exposure for my skin tone. And this is where I think, having an external monitor is really helpful and a huge advantage. Unfortunately, most cameras don't have all these extra tools. Their exposure meter might be biased because, the camera's not actually sure what you're trying to expose for. So even though your skin tone might be properly exposed for, the camera might see like a brighter part of the image, like say for instance, a light or a window, and it'll tell you straight away that your image is blown out or it's overexposed. Hopefully that kind of makes a little bit of sense. Now with my exposure assist, I have mine set to spectrum, but you can also set yours to ARRI or ARRI or however you say it. But you can also make your own custom values for that as well. I also have mine set to make sure that ignore look is ticked, so it's not taking into account the LUT that I have enabled. Now lastly, if I swipe across again, I'll be getting to my waveform. Now this is another great tool that I've recently started using, and I've got it set to Luma and at full screen. So you can also do RGB or you can do the parade. Now I'm mostly using this tool to judge all my contrast ratios. So for instance, what's sitting in my 60 to 70 IRE scale, or what's sitting in my 40 to 50 IRE scale, etc. So what I usually like to do is have the subject, so myself, as the brightest part of my composition. But all the other colors like the pinks and the blues, I want them to be sitting lower than what my exposure for my face is. So I've got my face set to around that 60 to 70 IRE scale, and then I want the lights in the background to be sitting around, under that. So then I'm popping out from the background more. And, having the Luma overlay is really going to give me a quick snapshot of, all those IRE levels and those lights where they're sitting. Now, hopefully that makes some sort of sense, but I'm still trying to get into this contrast ratios and understanding that a lot better, and start exploring that, because I think it really is gonna take your productions and your lighting to another level. All right, well that's a little look at how I've set up all of my SmallHD monitors for all of my shoots. If you haven't already, try these functions out. Let me know in the comments if they work for you. And if you don't have any of the SmallHD products, well, I can highly, highly, highly recommend these, especially if you're a wedding shooter. And no, I'm not sponsored by SmallHD, I wish I was. But these things are super lightweight. For all the functions and all the tools that you get in it, I think these things are just great. Now, as always, I've left links to all the things that we've talked about down below that you can check out. You can go buy them if you really, really want to. You should, because I assume I've convinced you to buy it, right? Even if you don't into cameras or into monitors or anything, you're just gonna buy it anyway. All right, love ya, bye. Actually, one more thing I forgot. I'm gonna sit down and tell you, because it would be really, really awesome if you like this video to like it, and that you consider subscribing, and that you turn on the bell and notifications so that you're notified when I post content. Okay, I feel like I got that out right. This is probably the 5th time that I've done it. Okay, but anyway, now I'm going. I actually don't even know why I have to keep walking off to press stop, because I can just stop it on the... Anyway, bye.